The UK might be making a big blunder that can benefit China. The Solomon Islands leader has been arrested for standing up to the CCP, and China's economic stimulus plan has already failed. Then more on this week's China News headlines. Welcome to China Uncensored. I'm Chris Chappell. This episode is sponsored by Surfshark. Whenever you go online, you should be using a VPN like Surfshark to cover your tracks and protect your identity. I'll tell you more at the end. But I'm afraid I have some bad news to start out with today. Outspoken Chinese Communist Party critic and longtime friend of the show, Daniel Soidani, and his former advisor, Celsus Talafilou, are facing some pretty suspicious riot charges in Solomon Islands, where Soidani was once the premier of Malaita province. The charges of unlawful assembly relate to events from all the way back in 2021, when riots broke out against then leader of the Solomon Islands, Manasseh Sogavare. Protesters were angry about the switch. That is, Sogavare cut ties with Taiwan and switched to backing the PRC, i.e. Communist China, which I think we can all agree is a transition no one should be supporting, unless you're the one making money from it. Soidani was a vocal critic of the decision to switch alliances to the PRC, and he was a critic of Sogavare, and accused his former government of jeopardizing the Solomon Islands' relations with Western allies. In 2023, Soidani was ousted from his post after an onslaught of motions of a vote of no confidence, which Soidani's supporters argued were politically motivated. China Uncensored then started a fundraiser to bring them to Washington, D.C. to meet with U.S. leaders and raise his profile enough that he wouldn't be arrested as soon as he went back. And that worked for about a year. Now his political opponents are hoping we've all forgotten about them. We haven't. Soidani maintains that these charges brought against him now are also politically motivated. He says that's obvious from the police questioning that he underwent. As he put it, when they question me, they always refer to after the switch. You were masterminding, and every question the police ask me, they always refer to as after the switch. So I can understand that they want to drive these allegations to connect with the switch from ROC to PRC. Both Soidani and Talafilou are out on bail awaiting trial. Sogavare stepped down in recent elections and was succeeded by his former Minister of Affairs, Jeremiah Manelli, who is also in favor of tightening ties with the CCP. So it's hard not to think these charges against Soidani and Talafilou are perhaps more about political revenge than about any actual involvement in the 2021 protests, especially since this comes nearly 3 years after the protests occurred. Soidani has vowed not to change his views and to keep fighting for democracy, as well as fight the charges in court. Which sounds like protesting the government to me. Looks like he might have some more charges coming his way. The UK's Conservative Party, also known as the Tories, are rallying against their country's move to hand back the Chagos Islands. The UK handed over what has been described as its last African colony to the island nation of Mauritius, which actually lies closer to India than Africa. The deal would allow Britain and the United States to maintain the crucial Diego Garcia base for another 99 years. But UK conservatives are still concerned that the deal could harm strategic interests in the Indo-Pacific because guess who's been cozying up to the government of Mauritius lately? You guessed it, China. Ian Duncan Smith, a former Tory leader and longtime critic of China, said the Mauritian government was guilty of vast human rights abuses by locking up independent politicians and described it as in league with the Chinese. I guess the governments that abuse together, peruse together? China is trying to establish its own currency in Mauritius as an alternative to the US dollar. Last month, the two countries agreed to a $281 million currency swap deal to, in the words of Mauritius' central bank, promote bilateral trade and investment. Why stop there? To really strengthen ties, they may as well also write on their money, commit all the human rights abuses you want. We're cool, unlike those uptight Americans. While it remains to be seen if handing over the islands will give China more access to Diego Garcia base, Beijing is already using Mauritius to box in India and project its power into Africa with its string of pearls policy. Not to be mistaken with China's clutching of pearls policy, where they pretend to be offended anytime anyone accuses them of doing something terrible that they're actually doing. A recent stock rally in China appears to have fizzled out alongside China's big plans to jumpstart its economy with a stimulus. Shares jumped by over 10% when trading restarted after the Golden Week holiday, but fell back after a recent news conference regarding the Chinese Communist Party's so-called stimulus plans. Stocks in Shanghai tumbled 6.6% for their worst loss since February 2020, the early days of the pandemic. Meanwhile, Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index slumped by 9.4%. Investors had been hopeful for a detailed plan to support rapid economic growth in China, but the actual plan the Chinese Communist Party released was not very detailed. The CCP announced a few weeks back that it would support the stock market, give help to the country's failing property industry, increase cash handouts for the poor, and allow for more government spending, largely through a stimulus. But many economists remain skeptical that these were anything more than superficial and limited reforms to slightly decrease short-term economic pain. At a recent news conference, the chairman of China's National Development and Reform Commission said he is fully confident that his country will achieve its full-year economic and social goals, but added that downward pressures on the Chinese economy were growing. His comments came as China announced it will issue $28 billion for spending and investment projects by the end of this year. One economist said that the market is reacting to the lack of a real fiscal stimulus. I would not have organized a press conference not to announce anything new. But why not organize a press conference when just the anticipation of one makes the stocks rebound? And anyway, as we all know, CCP officials just love meaningless statements on the economy. Their official policy is, we tried nothing and we're all out of ideas. Meanwhile, China is putting tariffs on European brandy. China's tariffs are in retaliation for tariffs the EU approved 4 days ago on Chinese electric vehicles. The EU has largely joined allied nations like the US and Canada in accusing China of using unfair trade rules to dump goods like EVs on the global market and undercut local or domestic competition. And now, China is saying European brandy was being dumped in China, threatening to inflict substantial damage to domestic producers. Yes, China's giant brandy market. This is a reminder that the West still has much more powerful financial leverage over China than vice versa, at least for now. And after the break, Chinese hackers are at it again. Welcome back. The United States National Security Agency is investigating a Chinese hack of 3 major telecommunications companies, which is crazy. I mean, when has China ever hacked a company? This hour. The Wall Street Journal reported that Chinese-backed hackers targeted AT&T, Verizon, and Lumen Technologies. According to an anonymous source with knowledge of the matter, this hack may have been an attempt to gain access to information from the systems the federal government uses for court-approved electronic surveillance. None of the 3 companies have commented on the investigation, and neither have the FBI nor the White House National Security Council. And as usual, China's throwing a hissy fit over stuff related to Taiwan. Former Taiwanese President Tsai Ing-wen is set to visit the Czech Republic and other yet unannounced European destinations. China is not happy. At a Tuesday briefing, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Mao Ning restated China's opposition to any Taiwan independence elements visiting countries that establish diplomatic relations with China in any name. We urge the Czech Republic and other relevant countries to respect China's sovereignty and territorial integrity. This is just sad at this point. The only European country to formally recognize Taiwan is Vatican City, though Taipei has strong informal relations with other European countries. Maybe while Tsai is in Europe, she can enjoy some of that fine European brandy. Meanwhile, China and the Philippines are in yet another spat over the South China Sea. I don't know what to tell you. Time is a flat, dumb circle. China claims nearly the entirety of the South China Sea through its 9-dash line, even though an independent tribunal in The Hague years ago ruled this claim was illegitimate. The CCP says that 2 Philippine ships invaded its waters in the Scarborough Shoal, and that it was forced to use control measures. Scarborough Shoal is hotly contested, thanks China, and has been the site of regular flare-ups between the CCP and the Philippines. The 2 Filipino vessels were sailing in Manila's exclusive economic zone on a routine mission to resupply fishermen. 3 Chinese Coast Guard vessels and a vessel from the People's Liberation Army Navy shadowed their movements and approached at a close distance, then directed water cannons at them, which missed. The incident happened right before the start of the annual summit of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN, in Laos, where the disputed South China Sea will be discussed. But I imagine tensions will continue to heat up, no matter how much China tries cooling them off by force. Now, I mentioned earlier about how the CCP hacked 3 major telecom companies. And one thing that ought to tell you is whenever you share data online, you need to be very, very careful. And one really important way to protect yourself is by using a VPN, like Surfshark. When you go online, everything you do is being tracked and logged by the websites you visit, your internet service provider, and often by your own government, not to mention sometimes by CCP hackers. Using a VPN makes you harder to track. Surfshark has servers you can connect to in over 100 countries, more than any other VPN. That makes your connection faster and more reliable. Plus, Surfshark has top-of-the-line encryption and a no-logs policy, meaning they don't collect your browsing data. That's why Surfshark was rated Editor's Choice for the best VPN for privacy and security by PC Mag. So check out Surfshark. With just one Surfshark account, you can connect as many devices as you want. It also comes with a 30-day money-back guarantee. So try out Surfshark risk-free. Go to surfshark.com/uncensored to get up to 4 months extra. That's surfshark.com/uncensored. The link is in the description below. And before YouTube's algorithm sends you off to some random video, have you ever wondered if you're an NPC? Check out this latest video from my gaming channel about the Silent Hill 2 remake to find out. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. See you next time.